Saul Kripke's Naming and Necessity is one of the most influential works within the analytical tradition. It originally consists of 3 lectures given at Princeton University in 1970. In these lectures, you can find a very influential criticism of the Frege-Russell theory of names, the descriptivist theory of names, and a defense of the Millian theory of names. So we have this tension between Millianism and descriptivism within the contemporary philosophy of language. Let's start with the Millian theory of names. It originally goes back to John Stuart Mill's 1843 book, A System of Logic. According to Mill, there are 2 kinds of terms. These are connotative terms and non-connotative terms. A non-connotative term is one which signifies a subject only or an attribute only. On the other hand, a connotative term is one which denotes a subject, just as a non-connotative term, plus it implies an attribute. So a connotative term has a connotation in addition to its denotation. A non-connotative term has only a denotation, but a connotative term has a denotation plus a connotation. Proper names like John, London, or England are non-connotative terms. They are names which signify a subject only, so they have only a denotation. They do not have any connotation. But terms like white, long, virtuous are connotative. For example, the word white denotes all white things, as snow, paper, the foam of the sea, etc., and implies, or in the language of the schoolman, connotes the attribute of whiteness. So the word white has a denotation and a connotation, but these proper names do not have a connotation. They have only a denotation. This code is very important to understand the origins of Millian theory of names. This is from Mill's book, A System of Logic. A town may have been named Dartmouth. Dartmouth is the proper name here because it is situated at the mouth of the Dart. But it is no part of the signification of the word Dartmouth to be situated at the mouth of the Dart. If sand should choke up the mouth of the river, or an earthquake change its course and remove it to a distance from the town, the name of the town would not necessarily be changed. That fact, therefore, can form no part of the signification of the word. For otherwise, when the fact confesses the cease to be true, no one would any longer think of applying the name. But we would apply this name, Dartmouth, even if those stuff happens. Proper names are attached to the object themselves. Dartmouth is attached to that city itself, and are not dependent on the continuance of any attribute of the object. See the contrast between a term like white and a proper name like Dartmouth. A term, white, are dependent on the continuance of the attributes of the white objects. If a white object ceases to be white, then we would not use white, the term white, to refer to that thing. So on the other side, we have the descriptivist theory of names. We have 2 big names here. One is Gottlob Frege and the other one is Bertrand Russell. You are already familiar with Gottlob Frege's descriptivist theory of names. We have linguistic expressions here, like a proper name, and proper names denote objects. The semantic values are here, but the link between linguistic terms and objects is provided by associated descriptions, as we know that associated descriptions are senses of proper names, because sense is the presentation of the object denoted. The other important name in the descriptivist theory of names is Bertrand Russell, which we will see his work in the following weeks. So for Russell, proper names, I mean the ordinary proper names like Russell, Aristotle, Frege, Kripke, or London, etc., ordinary proper names are actually disguised definite descriptions. They are not proper names in the logical sense. They are disguised definite descriptions. So meaning of a proper name is the associated description for Russell. Kripke argues against, Kripke is on the million side, he argues against the descriptivist theory of names, the Frege-Russell theory of names. But before arguing against the descriptivist theory of names, he first mentions several advantages of this view. The first one is reference fixing. As you remember from Frege's work, in the descriptivist theory of names, we know how to fix the reference of a proper name. Aristotle refers to Aristotle, but when you ask how does it refer to Aristotle, the answer is that we have associated descriptions, senses in between these two. And descriptivist theory is able to make sense of informative identity statements. As you remember from Frege's work, there are two kinds of identity statements, informative and non-informative. When you say Hesperus is Hesperus, it's a non-informative identity statement. But this one, Hesperus is Phosphorus, is an informative identity statement. And the puzzle, as you remember, that even though this is an identity statement, which means that there is an object that is identical to itself, because when you say Hesperus is Phosphorus, there is an object, that star, right? And that object is identical to itself. But how comes that this is informative? And our descriptivist theory makes sense of that there are informative identity statements because proper names are associated, at least associated, in the in Frege's theory. Proper names are, the associated definite descriptions. Associated descriptions play a very important semantic role in proper names in terms, like Hesperus here is a proper name, Phosphorus is a proper name. So that explains how comes identity statements are informative. Because when you say Hesperus is Phosphorus, what you are saying is that the object that fits such and such description is the object that fits such and such descriptions. We will see how Russell solves these problems as well in the following weeks, but you already know Frege's solution for these problems. And the last one is negative existentials. Negative existential is an existential statement like something exists, Plato exists, or Pegasus exists. And negative existential means we have a negation there. It's like Pegasus does not exist. Consider million theory. If Pegasus, the proper name Pegasus, is not associated with any descriptions, or in other words, if Pegasus does not have any connotation, then how can we say that Pegasus does not exist? Or as it is in this example, when you say whether Aristotle ever existed, if you are a million and if you say that Aristotle here does not have a connotation, associated descriptions, if you say that associated descriptions do not play any semantic role, then you cannot make sense of this sentence, because it would mean that whether that object exists, if you are able to talk about any object, then you guarantee that that object exists. Then it would be absurd to make such a statement. But in the descriptivist theory of names, what this sentence means is that whether such and such, whether the object that fits, whether there is that object which fits such and such descriptions, characteristics, properties, etc. I mean, whether the author of metaphysics ever existed, whether anybody ever wrote that book, or whether if there was a person who taught Alexander the Great and who was a philosopher. So descriptivist theory makes sense of these let's say these linguistic phenomena. So this is the advantageous part of descriptivism, but Kripke says, nevertheless, I think it's pretty certain that the view of Frege and Russell is false. So there are advantageous sides of descriptivism, but still descriptivism is false.